Victor Montgomery could not remember the last time he had willingly attended a casual dinner party. Boardroom meetings and corporate galas filled his calendar, leaving little room for intimate gatherings. But when his oldest friend Marcus insisted he needed to remember how normal people lived, Victor reluctantly agreed. Now, standing on the doorstep of Marcus's modest brownstone in a neighborhood far from his Manhattan penthouse, Victor adjusted his watch a timepiece worth more than the average annual salary and pressed the doorbell. "You actually showed," Marcus exclaimed, swinging open the door. His friend wore an apron with faded lettering that read "Kiss the Cook," a stark contrast to Victor's tailored suit. "I was expecting a last-minute cancellation about some emergency petroleum acquisition in Dubai." Victor smiled, handing over an expensive bottle of wine. "The oil fields can wait one night. Besides, you threatened to post those college photos if I didn't come." "Damn right I did," Marcus laughed, ushering him inside. The mighty shipping magnate Victor Montgomery, brought to heel by blackmail. "Come in, there are people I want you to meet." The living room was warm and inviting, filled with the aroma of home-cooked food and the gentle murmur of conversation. Victor recognized a few faces: Marcus's wife Elaine, his colleague from the university where he taught, a couple who had attended their last reunion. But his eyes were drawn to a woman standing by the bookshelf, examining the titles with genuine interest. "That's Hannah," Marcus said, following his gaze. "Hannah Zimmerman. She moved in next door about 3 months ago. Brilliant woman, she's a marine biologist. Just got back from some expedition in the South Pacific." Victor nodded absently, watching as she tucked a strand of auburn hair behind her ear. She wore a simple emerald green dress that complemented her eyes, which he could see even from across the room were an unusual shade of hazel. "Come on," Marcus nudged him. "I'll introduce you." Hannah looked up as they approached, her expression open and friendly. "Marcus, I was just admiring your first edition Hemingway. Where on earth did you find it?" "Estate sale in Connecticut," Marcus replied proudly. "Hannah, this is my oldest friend, Victor Montgomery. We survived boarding school in Princeton together. Victor, meet Hannah Zimmerman, the neighbor who actually returns borrowed lawn tools." "A rarity indeed," Victor said, extending his hand. Her grip was firm, her skin warm. "Nice to meet you, Hannah." "Likewise," she replied, studying him with an intelligence that made him feel oddly transparent. "Though I must admit, Marcus has told me virtually nothing about you, except that you were coming tonight and that I should, quote, not be intimidated by the suit." Victor shot Marcus a look. "The suit is just a habit, and what exactly does a marine biologist do when not returning lawn tools?" Hannah's laugh was unexpectedly musical. "Currently, I'm analyzing data from our recent expedition studying coral reef resilience in changing oceanic conditions. Less glamorously, I'm also unpacking boxes because I still haven't properly settled in." "Hannah just got a grant to establish a new research center at the university," Marcus added. "She's kind of a big deal in the world of people who get excited about sea creatures." "Says the man who once gave a 40-minute lecture on medieval farming techniques," Hannah teased. "History needs defenders," Marcus replied with mock solemnity before his wife called him to help in the kitchen. "Duty calls. Play nice, you two." Left alone, Victor found himself unusually interested in Hannah's work. Normally, social small talk was an exercise in patience for him, but her passion for her research was infectious. "So your expedition, what exactly did you discover?" he asked, genuinely curious, her eyes lit up. "We found several coral species adapting to warming waters in ways previously undocumented. It could be revolutionary for reef conservation efforts." She paused, giving him an appraising look. "But I've been told that talking about coral polyps at dinner parties is a fast way to find yourself eating alone." "I own one of the largest shipping companies in the world," Victor said. "The health of the oceans is actually quite relevant to my interests, even if my board would prefer I focus solely on profit margins." Hannah raised an eyebrow. "Montgomery Shipping Lines, that's you." Guilty, Victor admitted, bracing himself for the reaction he typically received: sudden interest tinged with calculation. Instead, Hannah frowned slightly. Your company's environmental impact report last quarter was impressive on paper, but the carbon offset program seemed more like marketing than meaningful action. Have you considered implementing slower steaming protocols fleet-wide? The fuel savings alone would justify the schedule adjustments, not to mention the emissions reduction. Victor stared at her, momentarily speechless. People didn't usually challenge him, especially not within minutes of meeting him. You've read our environmental impact report. I read everyone's environmental impact reports, she said simply. Especially companies whose actions directly affect marine ecosystems. It's part of my job. Before Victor could respond, Marcus announced dinner was ready. Throughout the meal, Victor found his attention repeatedly drawn to Hannah. She was seated across from him, and he watched as she engaged effortlessly with everyone at the table, discussing politics with Marcus's colleague, gardening with Elaine, and even drawing out the quietest guest with thoughtful questions. When the conversation turned to Victor's recent acquisition of a struggling shipping line in Singapore, Hannah listened intently. It was a strategic move, Victor explained to the table. Their routes complement our existing network, and their fleet, while aging, can be modernized efficiently. And the workers? Hannah asked. What happens to them during this modernization? Victor met her gaze. We're retraining the entire workforce. It's more cost-effective long-term than replacing them, and it preserves institutional knowledge. Hannah nodded, a small smile playing at her lips. That's good to hear. As the evening progressed, Victor realized he was enjoying himself more than he had at any social gathering in recent memory. When Hannah mentioned she needed to leave early to prepare for a morning lecture, he found himself standing as well. I should get going too, he said. Early meeting tomorrow. Marcus gave him a knowing look but said nothing as Victor offered to walk Hannah to her door, which was literally next door. You don't have to escort me 20 feet, Hannah said, amused. Consider it old-fashioned manners my mother drilled into me, Victor replied as they stepped outside. The night air was cool, stars barely visible through the city's light pollution. At her doorstep, Hannah turned to him. It was nice meeting you, Victor. You're not at all what I expected. What did you expect? She considered this, her head tilted slightly. Someone less interested in coral polyps, I suppose. Victor laughed. I'm full of surprises, would you? Would you like to continue our conversation sometime, perhaps over coffee? Hannah looked at him for a long moment, as if making up her mind about something. I'd like that, she finally said. But I should warn you, I don't date casually, and I'm extraordinarily busy with the research center launch. I'm not asking for a commitment, Victor said. Just coffee and conversation with someone who isn't afraid to critique my company's environmental policies to my face. Hannah smiled. In that case, yes, coffee would be nice. They exchanged numbers, and Victor watched as she disappeared into her apartment. Walking back to where his driver waited, he realized he was smiling without knowing exactly why. 3 days later, Victor sat in a small cafe several blocks from the university, checking his watch for the third time. Hannah was 15 minutes late, and he wasn't accustomed to being kept waiting. Just as he was considering calling her, she rushed in, slightly breathless. I'm so sorry, she said, sliding into the chair opposite him. Lab emergency. We had a power fluctuation that threatened our controlled environment tanks. Crisis averted, but it was close. No apologies necessary, Victor said, waving over the server. Though I was beginning to think you'd changed your mind. Hannah ordered a strong black coffee. I considered it, she admitted with surprising candor. I researched you after our dinner. Your net worth is quite intimidating. Victor's expression tightened. Is that going to be a problem? I don't know yet, she said thoughtfully. I've dated wealthy men before. It tends to complicate things in ways I don't particularly enjoy. Victor appreciated her honesty, even if it pricked at his pride. What if we agree to just be two people getting to know each other? No expectations, no complications. Hannah sipped her coffee when it arrived. That's a nice theory, but money always complicates things. You live in a world where problems can be solved by throwing money at them. I live in a world where I fight for grant funding and stretch every dollar for my research. That sounds like a stereotype, Victor countered. I work extremely hard. I've built my company from what my father left me into something 10 times its original size. I'm sure you do work hard, Hannah said, but there's a difference between working hard with a safety net and working hard without one. Victor leaned forward. You're making a lot of assumptions about me. Probably, she conceded. Just as you're likely making assumptions about me. I guess that's what getting to know each other is for, correcting those assumptions. Something about her directness disarmed him. Most people in Victor's life either wanted something from him or were intimidated by him. Hannah seemed neither impressed nor deterred by his wealth and position. Their conversation flowed more easily after that initial tension. Victor found himself talking about his childhood growing up as the son of a moderately successful shipping executive, losing his father in his senior year of college, and taking over a company on the brink of bankruptcy at 22. Everyone thought I'd sell, he told her. The board, the executives twice my age, even Marcus, but I couldn't. It was my father's life's work. Hannah nodded. That's how I feel about my research. It's not just a job, it's my purpose. Tell me about your family, Victor said. Hannah traced the rim of her cup. My parents were both academics. Mom taught linguistics. Dad was in anthropology. They raised me to believe education was the most valuable currency. They died in a car accident when I was in graduate school. Her voice remained steady, but Victor could see the old pain in her eyes. My brother lives in Seattle with his family. We're close, but distance makes visits rare. I'm sorry about your parents, Victor said softly. Thank you, it was a long time ago. She looked up at him. What about siblings for you? Only child, Victor replied. Probably for the best. I'm told I was quite demanding. Hannah laughed. I can imagine. Were you always destined for the family business? My father hoped so, but he never pressured me. I actually studied art history in college, much to his confusion. Victor smiled at the memory. I still collect when I can. My apartment has more paintings than furniture. I'd like to see that sometime, Hannah said, then immediately looked as if she regretted the words. I'd like to show you, Victor replied, carefully keeping any presumption from his tone. They talked until the cafe began closing around them, neither having noticed the time passing. Outside, the evening had turned chilly. Can I drive you home? Victor offered. Hannah shook her head. I have my car, but thank you for coffee and conversation. It was illuminating enough for dinner next time, Victor asked. Hannah considered him, her expression thoughtful. Yes, I think it was. Their first dinner date took place the following week at a small Italian restaurant Victor had never heard of, but which Hannah assured him had the best risotto in the city. She was right, the food was exceptional, and the owner greeted Hannah like family. Maria's son was in my introductory marine biology class last year, Hannah explained after the enthusiastic woman had left their table. He's now studying oceanography at UCLA. She refuses to let me pay whenever I come here. A policy I understand completely, Victor said, raising his glass to her. Hannah's eyes narrowed playfully. Are you comparing my teaching a college freshman to your, what was it yesterday, donating a new hospital wing? It was actually a marine research vessel, Victor corrected, and yes, I am comparing them. Both are investments in the future. Their conversation that night ranged from childhood memories to professional ambitions. Victor found himself talking about aspects of his business he rarely discussed outside the boardroom, while Hannah shared her dreams for the research center she was establishing. The goal is to create a hub for climate adaptation research, she explained, her passion evident. Not just studying the damage but finding solutions. Ways to help ecosystems adapt to the changes we can no longer prevent. It sounds remarkable, Victor said sincerely, and necessary. Hannah tilted her head. You surprise me, Victor Montgomery. You run a business that contributes significantly to the problem, yet you seem genuinely concerned about the environment. The two aren't mutually exclusive, Victor argued. In fact, after our first meeting, I had my team review those slower steaming protocols you mentioned. We're implementing a pilot program next quarter. Hannah's eyes widened. You're serious? Completely. It makes both environmental and economic sense, Victor shrugged. I should have looked into it sooner. After dinner, they walked through a nearby park, their conversation continuing effortlessly. When Hannah shivered in the night air, Victor instinctively removed his jacket and placed it around her shoulders. Very chivalrous, she commented, pulling the expensive fabric closer. My mother would be proud, Victor replied. Though she'd probably point out that a gentleman would have noticed you were cold sooner. Hannah laughed. Your mother sounds formidable. She was, Victor said softly. She died when I was 12, cancer. Hannah's hand found his, squeezing gently. I'm sorry. They stood there for a moment, hands linked, before continuing their walk. When they reached Hannah's apartment, Victor returned her goodnight with a kiss gentle and brief, but filled with promise. Over the next few weeks, they fell into a rhythm. Victor rearranged meetings to accommodate Hannah's teaching schedule. Hannah made time between research sessions and grant writing for dinners, museum visits, and long walks where they talked about everything and nothing. Their third date had been at Victor's penthouse, where Hannah had indeed seen his art collection. Her knowledge of art history had surprised and delighted him, leading to a spirited debate about contemporary artists that ended with them sitting on his balcony until sunrise, watching the city wake up. Their fifth date had been to a university function where Hannah was presenting her research. Victor had sat in the audience, genuinely fascinated by her work and unmistakably proud of the respect she commanded in her field. It was after a month of dating that Victor realized he was falling in love with her. The revelation came unexpectedly as he sat in a board meeting, ostensibly listening to quarterly projections, but actually thinking about the text. Hannah had sent him that morning a picture of a rare fish species one of her students had identified with the caption, "Thought of you. It has a grumpy expression just like you do before coffee." The realization both thrilled and terrified him. His past relationships had failed largely because of his dedication to his work and his reluctance to truly let anyone into his life. With Hannah, he wanted to share everything: his thoughts, his time, even his vulnerabilities. That evening, he took her to dinner at an exclusive restaurant overlooking the harbor. Hannah looked stunning in a midnight blue dress, her hair loose around her shoulders. Victor had called ahead to reserve the private dining room where floor-to-ceiling windows offered a spectacular view of the water. "This is beautiful," Hannah said, gazing out at the twinkling lights of the harbor. "Though I can't help calculating how many research grants this dinner could fund." Victor laughed, always the practical scientist. "Someone has to be," she replied with a smile. "Not all of us can afford to be dashing billionaires." They ordered, and as they waited for their meal, Victor found himself uncharacteristically nervous. He'd rehearsed what he wanted to say, but now the carefully prepared words seemed inadequate. "Hannah," he began, reaching across the table for her hand. "These past few weeks have been, I can't remember the last time I was this happy." She squeezed his fingers. "Me too. Though I'm still getting used to dating someone whose face occasionally appears in financial magazines." "Is that still bothering you, the money?" Victor asked, concerned. Hannah considered her answer. "Not in the way you might think. I'm not intimidated by your wealth anymore. I'm concerned about what it means for us, for what we're building together." "What do you mean?" "I mean that we live in different worlds, Victor. You can decide on a whim to fly to Paris for dinner. I budget for conference travel months in advance. You solve problems with resources I can't even imagine. I worry that eventually those differences will matter." Victor felt a tightness in his chest. "Do they matter to you now?" "Sometimes," she admitted. "When you sent that ridiculously expensive microscope to my lab last week." "It was a gift," Victor interjected. "Your team needed it." Yes, but that's exactly my point. You saw a need and your instinct was to simply fulfill it, regardless of cost. That's not how most people live. It's not how I live. Victor sat back, studying her face. What are you saying? Hannah sighed. I'm saying I'm falling in love with you and it terrifies me, because I don't want to be a charity project or an interesting diversion, and I don't want to change who I am to fit into your world. Victor felt his heart race at her words, both the confession and the concern. Hannah, I'm falling in love with you too, and I don't want you to change, not a single thing about you. She looked skeptical. You say that now, but no, Victor interrupted, his voice firm. Listen to me. Yes, I have resources that make certain aspects of life easier, but before I met you, I was just going through the motions. Working, succeeding, acquiring, but not really living. He leaned forward, his eyes intense. You challenge me. You make me question assumptions I didn't even know I had. You see the world in ways I never considered. Hannah's expression softened, but she still looked uncertain. And what happens when the novelty wears off, when challenging you becomes irritating rather than refreshing? That won't happen, Victor said with conviction. You can't know that. I know myself, Victor countered. And I've never felt this way about anyone. I want to build something real with you, Hannah, something that lasts. Their food arrived, temporarily pausing the conversation. After the server left, Hannah took a deep breath. I want that too, she said quietly. But I need to know that you really see me as an equal partner, not someone to rescue or improve or impress. Victor reached for her hand again. I see you, Hannah Zimmerman, brilliant, passionate, stubborn, and completely unwilling to be impressed by my money, he smiled. Which, by the way, is oddly refreshing. Hannah laughed, the tension breaking. Well, I am impressed by some things about you, just not your bank account. The rest of dinner passed more easily, their conversation flowing from serious to playful and back again. Later, as they walked along the harbor promenade, Hannah slipped her hand into Victor's. I have a confession, she said. When Marcus first told me his billionaire friend was coming to dinner, I was prepared to dislike you on principle. Victor raised an eyebrow. Because of my wealth. Partly, Hannah nodded. And partly because the last wealthy man I dated was more interested in having a scientist girlfriend as a conversation piece than an actual conversation. His loss, Victor said simply. Definitely your gain, Hannah replied with a smile. They stopped at the edge of the water, the city lights reflecting on its surface. Victor turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. I have a proposal for you, he said. Not that kind, he added quickly when her eyes widened, though I'm not ruling it out for the future. Hannah's expression was a mix of relief and something that looked like pleasant anticipation. I'm listening. My company is launching a new environmental initiative establishing marine protected areas around our major shipping routes. We need a lead scientific advisor. Someone who understands marine ecosystems and can help develop meaningful conservation strategies, not just PR stunts. Hannah's eyes narrowed. Are you offering me a job, a partnership? Victor corrected. Paid, independent consulting with complete scientific autonomy. You would report directly to the board, not to me. Your research center would receive priority funding, but you would have no obligation to give favorable reviews to company policies that don't meet scientific standards. Hannah looked stunned. You're serious? Entirely, Victor confirmed. I need someone I can trust to tell me the truth, not what they think I want to hear. The company needs your expertise, and frankly, the oceans need advocates with both scientific credibility and access to corporate resources. Hannah was quiet for a long moment, processing. This is a real position, not something you're creating for me. We've been discussing hiring someone for months, Victor assured her. Your name came up in the initial search committee before we even met. Marcus mentioned you were moving to the area and your reputation preceded you. So that dinner party was genuinely just a dinner party, Victor finished. Marcus had no idea the company was considering you for the position. The connection didn't even occur to me until our second date, and by then, it seemed complicated to bring up. Hannah paced a few steps, thinking. It would have to be completely transparent, no conflicts of interest, real or perceived. Absolutely, Victor agreed. Full disclosure, separate professional and personal relationships. And if our relationship doesn't work out. Victor felt a twinge at the thought but kept his voice steady. The position is yours regardless of our personal relationship, though I have to admit I'm hoping that's not a scenario we'll face. Hannah stopped pacing and looked at him, her expression softening. I hope not too. She took a deep breath. I'll need to see the formal proposal, discuss it with my department chair, make sure there are no academic conflicts. Of course, Victor said. Take all the time you need, the offer isn't contingent on your answer tonight. Hannah stepped closer to him, her eyes searching his face. You really are full of surprises, Victor Montgomery, he smiled. Is that a good thing? I'm still deciding, she replied, but her smile gave her away. She rose on her tiptoes and kissed him, a kiss that held both promise and certainty. 6 months later, Hannah's research center was thriving, partly due to the partnership with Montgomery shipping lines, but primarily because of her own brilliant leadership. The company's new environmental initiatives were generating positive attention in both scientific and business communities. Victor had even been featured in a sustainability magazine, much to his amusement and Hannah's pride. Their relationship had deepened with each passing month. They had weathered their first argument, a heated disagreement about a proposed shipping route that would have impacted a sensitive reef system. Hannah had stood her ground professionally, and Victor had ultimately agreed that the environmental costs outweighed the economic benefits. Their personal relationship had emerged stronger for having navigated the conflict with mutual respect. On the anniversary of their first meeting at Marcus's dinner party, Victor arranged for a private dinner on his yacht, not the massive corporate vessel used for business entertaining, but the smaller, sleeker boat he rarely found time to enjoy. He had the deck set up with candles and flowers, a touch Hannah would likely tease him about but secretly appreciate. As the yacht drifted in the harbor at sunset, Hannah joined him at the railing, looking out over the water. Happy anniversary, Victor said, handing her a glass of champagne. Has it really been a year since Marcus's dinner party? Hannah marveled. It feels like yesterday and forever ago at the same time. A year since you criticized my company's environmental policies within 5 minutes of meeting me, Victor reminded her with a smile. Hannah laughed. I still stand by those criticisms, by the way, I know. That's why we've addressed most of them. Victor raised his glass to her. To the woman who keeps me honest. They clinked glasses, and Victor felt a now familiar warmth in his chest as he looked at her. The past year had been the happiest of his life. Hannah had integrated seamlessly into his world while maintaining her own identity and career. He had found himself embracing aspects of her life too, attending academic lectures, spending weekends helping at beach cleanups, even learning to scuba dive so he could see firsthand the ecosystems she worked to protect. After dinner, Victor suggested a walk around the deck. The night was clear, stars visible now that they were away from the brightest city lights. He led Hannah to the bow of the yacht, where the view of the skyline was most spectacular. I have something for you, Victor said, reaching into his pocket. Victor, we agreed no extravagant gifts, Hannah began, but stopped when she saw what he was holding, not a jewelry box as she might have feared, but a small, weathered book. It's a first edition of Rachel Carson's The Sea Around Us, Victor explained, handing it to her. I remembered you mentioning she was one of your inspirations for becoming a marine biologist. Hannah carefully opened the book, her fingers gently tracing the pages. Victor, this is perfect, thank you. She looked up at him, her eyes shining. You really do listen. To every word, Victor said softly. He took a deep breath. Hannah, this past year has been the most meaningful of my life. Before you, I was successful but not fulfilled. You've shown me what it means to live with purpose, with passion. Hannah's expression grew serious as she realized where this was going. Victor. He took her hands in his. I'm not perfect, I work too much, I can be stubborn, and yes, sometimes I still try to solve problems by throwing money at them, but I'm learning. With you, I want to keep learning. Slowly, Victor dropped to one knee, still holding her hands. Hannah Zimmerman, you walked into my life unexpected and unplanned, and now I can't imagine my future without you. Will you marry me? He reached into his pocket again and pulled out a ring, not the ostentatious diamond his position might have suggested, but an elegant sapphire surrounded by smaller ethical diamonds, set in recycled platinum. He had chosen it knowing Hannah would appreciate both its beauty and its conscientious sourcing. Hannah looked at the ring, then at Victor's face, tears gathering in her eyes. You know this doesn't solve our differences, she said, her voice wavering slightly. We'll still come from different worlds. I know, Victor acknowledged, but I think that's our strength, not our weakness. We balance each other. You keep me grounded, I hope I help you dream bigger. Together, we're better than we are apart. Hannah smiled through her tears. That was a very good answer. I've been practicing, Victor admitted. Hannah laughed, the sound carrying across the water. Yes, she said simply. Yes, I'll marry you. Victor slid the ring onto her finger and stood, gathering her into his arms. Their kiss was a promise of partnership, of growth, of a future built together. Later, as they lay on deck chairs looking up at the stars, Hannah's head resting on Victor's shoulder, she said, You know, I never thanked Marcus properly for that dinner party invitation. Victor smiled. Neither did I, though I suspect from his knowing looks whenever we're together that he's quite aware of his role in all this. We should invite him to be our best man, Hannah suggested. Absolutely, Victor agreed, though he'll never let us hear the end of it. Hannah traced the ring on her finger, watching how it caught the starlight. I can live with that. Small price to pay for finding you. Victor kissed the top of her head. The best investments often come from unexpected opportunities. Hannah groaned. Please tell me you're not going to turn our wedding vows into business metaphors. No promises, Victor replied with a laugh, but I have the rest of our lives to work on it. As the yacht drifted gently in the harbor, the city lights twinkling like earthbound stars, Victor Montgomery, billionaire, shipping magnate, and now fiancé, knew with absolute certainty that of all his acquisitions and achievements, meeting Hannah Zimmerman at his friend's dinner party had been the most fortunate and precious of them all.